Got it. Got it. You can hear me. They can hear me. Can you hear me out there?
Wow.
They can hear me. See, they can hear me.
Can't hear you now.
I don't want to mess up my.
No, look at me.
I don't want to mess up my tie. You can't hear me.
Can't hear. Scott, if it's not on the tie right there in front, it's not going to work.
Jeez. How about that?
There you go. It makes a difference.
It'll pick it up from your neck if nothing else. That's where the voice box is. Correct?
Like a speaker there.
Well, it's just like when you get those, what they used to have these things called bone phones. It was about this big
Bone
fit
phone.
around your shoulders, and it used your sternum as a sounding board. Plug it into your radio.
Nostalgic, that's what it is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Might or do? You say we might or do? Let's see.
We'll just call it news radio.
Personnel. Okay. Okay. Do-do-do-da.
Somebody poisoned it, she said.
I think they ain't came back yet,
Mr. Mayor, it's 7 o'clock.
last I heard. I will open up the public hearing that we have tonight on the small tract of land that's out on Muskrat Road. There's a small sliver of land that we are changing from fringe agriculture to general residential. Anyone who would like to address council on that?
I don't even know where this is, but because of the problems that we have encountered, not knowing a lot, can you tell me why this is being done?
When we get to that point on the agenda, we can
Bob.
discuss it a little bit and everything.
Bob.
Let me get your name and address for the record.
I don't know, yeah. My name is Marie Hutchison, 109 Hamilton Park Drive, Irmo.
Oh, okay.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and call the regular meeting to order. And I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father, before we get started, I'd like to have a moment of silence. This week, June the 6th, this Thursday, is the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And just a moment of silence in reference to those gentlemen who gave their life and lost their life. And Father, we ask for your wisdom tonight, ask for your guidance, ask for your our strength and courage, Lord, to be here. We thank you for the opportunity to be here, Lord. We thank you for the men and women who have served our nation for many years to give us the ability to be here tonight and to openly discuss and debate and to do things that the town council has on its agenda tonight. Help us, Lord, to do what is right. Help us, Lord, to do what is good. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Next item on the agenda is the reading of the minutes from May 21st. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes?
So move.
And a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I do. May I?
Yep.
All right. Just in the third paragraph, Adrian Bird is actually Dr. Adrian Bird. If you can correct that.
Anything else? All in favor of the minutes being approved as amended, do so with show of hands. Next is the administrative briefing. Mr. Brown, anything you need to add?
No, sir.
Any questions of Mr. Brown on the briefing? Seeing none. Next is the update on Three Rivers Project, Mr. Klein.
Good evening, Council. I'm Whit Klein. I handle the stormwater for the town of Irmo. When we're talking about stormwater, we're not talking about flooding type water. We're talking about water quality. We're a member of the Midlands River Coalition, the Three Rivers Group. The object of this group is to have all the stormwater, all the rainwater that goes into the rivers, whether it be the Saluda, Broad, or the Congaree, to be extraordinarily clean. It has been contaminated over the years. We're working to clean it up. Everybody's roads, parks, etc., drain into these rivers. When you go to the river, you don't know whether the water's good or bad. Now we have a way of knowing. So if you'll go to this website that's on the board here, housemyriversc.org, it'll tell you every Wednesday morning we'll go out and take samples. By Thursday afternoon, they'll be on that website. It'll show you the rivers, and it'll show you where all the samples were taken. You can click on it, and it gives you the water quality at those spots. Last week at Saluda Shoals, it was 28. Anything under 100 is pretty darn good, so 28's probably about as good as it'll ever be. Anything over 300 is usually dangerous to get in the water. So if there's an advisory, if it's over 300, they'll put an advisory there and tell you to stay out of the water. So any of our residents that'll be using the Saluda River, whether it be at Saluda Shoals or further down where they're building a park by the zoo, you can go onto that website and check it every Thursday, and it'll give you the totals for that week. So it's a good way of keeping up with how good we're doing and everybody else. Occasionally you are going to get some sanitary sewer overflows, but besides that, you should know the quality of the water weekly. And this is similar to when you go to the beach, they give a water quality, and they'll tell you, if the bacteria level's high, to stay out of the water at the beach. Well, this is a similar program, and that's what we're out here talking about today. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your time.
And when you check or when y'all check, what kind of stuff do they check for?
We're checking for bacteria. Bacteria is a nice name for poop. So it's sewage is what we're looking for.
Okay. But as far as chemicals, something else would do that, or we don't?
If there's something that's suspicious, they'll check for that, but it's bacteria is what they're looking for. That's the main contaminant in these rivers around the Columbia area and have been for a very long time. But they're a lot better than they used to be. Last month, the Carolina Water Service discharge from their treatment facility ceased into the Saluda River. So, and the same thing happened the previous year on the Lexington side. The Carolina Water Service discharge pipe was cut off there. So now all the sewage from the Friars Gate treatment plant is being diverted to the City of Columbia's water treatment facility. And in Lexington, it's being treated by the City of Casey. So we don't have those two facilities dumping sewage, whether it was treated or untreated, into the river anymore. So that's a big change in the quality of the water. So far this year, it's been really good. And hopefully it'll stay that way. So,
What about motor oil and antifreeze, stuff like that from?
but we don't want any of that in there. In a river system, it's going to be hard to pick that up with a test because, unless you had like a serious dump of large chemicals. But the main thing they're checking for is bacteria because that's where all the problems have come from in the past is the bacteria. All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
And you said 300 was bad and
Yeah, they'll give you an advisory if it's over 300.
and 225 is good or something.
It's
You said
decent. You want it under 100. Anything under 100 is good.
is that parts per million or something? Or-
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
And let's see. Next is amendments to the agenda. Any amendments to the agenda? Next is consideration of communication. I did want to share one. We got a little thing. We have on our agenda tonight, what was put on there the other day was to change 32 acres or 37 acres, I can't remember, to general commercial from planned development. That's been changed to 8 acres, just the portion that the people are looking at. So it's not the whole 32 acres. And when we get ready to do that, we'll make a motion just for the 8 acres and not the 32. Julie Rame is with Lovelace in Yarborough. She is here if anybody wants to answer anything, but she kind of basically said that. There's a little golf cart place going in there, just for the people to know what's going in. It's a place that sells golf carts and repairs them. And what else did she say? That was it?
Club car, which is
Club Car is the manufacturer, so a nice little business and everything.
Which ordinance is it?
19.9. I think it's the second one under new business. So, but it won't be the whole 32 or 37, whatever was on there. It's down to the 8 now. Any other consideration of communications? Seeing none. Next is presentation by citizens for agenda items. All we ask is you come to the podium, give us your name and address for the record, and then which agenda item you want to speak to. Seeing
Cam?
How are you guys doing?
good, good.
So we're speaking on
What's your name and address?
Cameron Beeman at 460 Harleston Road.
Okay.
So we're speaking on which portion of that?
What you call me about?
Okay. Recently I was a victim of 4 break-ins. It's happened over the period of 4 months. All of my vehicles were ran through. I mean, stuff was everywhere inside of the car. My only, problem with that is I do lock my vehicles. Unfortunately, they have broken windows. It's caused damage to the cars and whatnot. It's really not too big of a deal. Insurance covers most of that, but it would just be nice to see people out there kind of looking out at night in Friarsgate, that area. We've been having a lot of break-ins, so that's pretty much all I have to say.
Did you report these to the police department?
I did not. Insurance covered everything, so I just didn't think of it, and my schedule's pretty busy, so haven't really had time. Would have been a smart move, though.
And this is not the first time this happened.
No, it happened a couple weeks ago, or I think last week was the last time, and ever since then we've locked the cars. We've looked into getting cameras and whatnot installed in the trees, but there's really not much that we can do at that point. So.
Let me get your name again. I couldn't get the whole thing.
Cameron, it's spelled Kamryn.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
And anyone else?
Hi, Eric Sickinger. Just one, and I'm not a doctor. One quick thing is that website is howsmyscriver.org. It's not How's My River SC, just for the notes. Thanks.
Okay. And anyone else? Next item is third and final reading, 1906. This is our fiscal year, July 2019 through June of 2020 budget in the amount of $6,392,267. I think that's right, $6,392,267. Is there a motion for third reading?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, we always run a surplus in our budget. What was the surplus last year, Bob? You recall? It was 100,000 plus, but I know we bought cars out of that.
I believe you're correct. It was close. It was like $80,000 or something was the surplus before we got the car. But remember, we took a lot of money out of the separate garbage account to help balance that account.
Yeah, but I mean, we had a surplus, and that's what we used to buy those cars, right?
That's correct.
Okay, how much do we have left over from that after that was done?
Nothing. We spent all of it plus a little bit more because we bought
Okay.
4 cars.
How much surplus do you anticipate this year?
I'm
not holding you to a number. I mean, is it going to be more than $10,000?
Well, right now, there's an $18,460.
I'm talking to Bob. Is it more than 10,000 or what?
It's going to be close to what it was last year, probably somewhere between 60 and 100,000.
Okay. I make a motion that we amend this budget to add $5,000 for the speed detectors for the police department to use to detect speeders in neighborhoods. I believe you guys got the paperwork to look at that. It's about $5,000.
There's a motion on the table to amend and add 5,000. Is there a second?
This is for the safety of the neighborhoods.
There is no second. Motion will die for lack of second. Any more discussion? Right now, what we're budgeting is
Kathy was
18,000.
second, right? She seconded.
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
18,468 coming out of reserve. We may have a surplus at the end of the year based on what is spent, and also based on maybe some other businesses moving into town and paying a business license. But until they move here or until they finish building and open up and pay, we can't really budget on that.
If I'm reading this right, we're already in the red, $18,468.
Right. Yes.
Which is frightening.
And for the record too, for multiple years, I think you got elected in what, 04?
3.
03, Barry 04 and I 05. For years, we've always had a little bit extra. Of course, we've had a lot of low expenses, you might say, but the last 3 or 4 years, due to cost of health benefits and all those things raising the way they do, our liability insurance has increased. I don't know if it was 30 or 40,000. Bob, is that kind of correct?
I think it was more than that, wasn't it?
Our liability insurance, what it did increase last year, about 30 or 40? 33,000. And so, if you're a business, there's a lot of things you can do. If you're a government, the only thing we can do to offset the increases in those expenses that keep going up is either raise property tax or raise revenue somewhere. We don't have a property tax, and this is actually still at a 0 property tax for the town of Irmo. The only thing we can do is either raise a business license or, like we did last year, raise the 1% franchise fee. And sometimes we did last year, we raised a few garbage administrative fees to kind of offset some stuff. But even after doing all that, we're still at an $18,000 deficit, which again isn't as worrisome as it may seem, because we do have the Honda dealership and the, Krager plumbing opening up, plus maybe if we approve this thing tonight, the golf cart place too. And, there's always these other businesses coming in. We heard about a new Starbucks and I think something else recently too. I can't remember what it was, but who knows? Who knows if it'll come? But we just have to be tight until we see next year. And I would almost think whatever the business license that come in this year for next year, the increase in health benefits and the liability insurance is probably going to eat up most of that again. We're at that point now where we got to be real lean and good stewards of that money, or we could be looking at bringing back property tax or something, or increasing some fee somewhere. But I think it's still, good to be only that short with a 0 millage and knowing that there's other cash coming in.
If we do have if we have a positive rather than a negative, I think we could do that.
We could do it without it. I mean, if you got a budget surplus of 80,000 potential dollars and you're talking about $5,000 added to this budget, that $5,000 is not going to break us
This budget's in the red.
by $18,000.
Well, that's a lot.
And we're talking about adding 5,000 to this budget, or take the 5,000 to buy these things out of this year's budget.
And those
Like
things
we
are
did the police, like we did police station.
$5,000 each, and if you needed 20 or 30 of them, then you're looking at not $5,000.
20 or 30 what?
Huh?
20 or 30 or what?
Of those things, you only got one.
That's all you need. That's all I'm saying, put
it on
in there.
one pole. What pole are you going to put it on?
It's got a pole that comes with it. You can go through all the
gotta be
details with
mounted
the
in the ground.
chief. I
Pole's gotta be
mean,
mounted
it's
in
$5,000 to purchase the device on a
Plus the
pole to be
pole.
put up.
And it has to be moved because it can be mounted one place, and then you got to pull the pole up. Yeah, I've looked into those things, and
There are 4 in 5 points and 6 blocks.
And there's
All it does
there's
is
one that's
tells
movable.
how fast you're going when you go through it. It doesn't write tickets. It doesn't summon anybody. And like I believe Councilman Pouliot said in the last meeting, why not just send a police officer on a random basis in neighborhoods that are complaining about speeding and let them write tickets? That'll stop them more than a sign saying you're going 20 miles an hour over the speed limit. If they're going that fast, they don't care anyway. I mean, I went to 5 points the other day, and I'm going 25 miles an hour in the first block from the Hardin Street Hill, and this car went by me at 50 miles an hour, and I went, well, he's in a hurry. Guess where he was going? Andy's Deli, same place I was going. He was hungry, I guess.
The whole idea is to track those cars and record those speeds and times.
But it doesn't record.
Yes, it does. These devices record the time and the day and the speed that they're traveling. That's the whole idea of having them out there. So that when you accumulate this information, you know that between 8 and 9 o'clock, you have a lot of speeders going through this section of town. That's where you put your police officer to write tickets. Right now, we don't have the information gathered anywhere. We just assume that we put a cop here that, will catch them speeding.
would have to move
But if you have
that.
hardcore data where the police officer has been recorded, where the speed has been recorded, and the police officers can look at that and say, oh, I know that this speed is being incurred, this violation is being incurred during this section of the day or this time of the day, then that's where you would put the officer to write the tickets. But again, a $5,000 investment for the safety of our citizens in our neighborhoods is not that much. And we have a surplus potentially of $80,000 out of this year's budget. I'd make a motion to take it out of this year's budget when we get to that point. But I mean, if you don't want to add it to next year's budget because of our deficit, I understand it. But I don't think $5,000 to an $18,000 deficit is not that big of a worry, especially when it comes to giving safety and taking care of what our citizens have asked us to do, is to catch speeders.
Well, it's one unit, and you either have to move it around town, because so what if you figure out one road and what their time is and what their speeding is, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't, then you got to pick it up, go drill another hole, put it somewhere else, and mount it somewhere else.
You said drill another hole?
Because the thing gets mounted in the earth.
It's movable on it's a pole, like a basketball pole. It's movable.
Well, if you're back to buying a trailer,
It's
we
not
can buy a trailer. And
It's
move
not a
around in it.
trailer. I said it's a basketball pole. You ever seen those basketball poles in people's
Ones I've
yards?
seen were
It's
either
got a
on street
base.
sign poles, telephone poles, or permanently in the ground.
Well, I'm telling you, this one I'm looking at is a basketball goal.
So it
It's
can be
mounted
stolen.
on a pole, and you can move it from the location to the location.
So it could be stolen and.
Yeah, after you chain it to a pole. I mean, you can throw all the stuff you want to throw at it,
Well,
Artie, but I mean, the bottom line is,
Sometime
we
we
don't,
don't talk about it during an agenda.
it's on the agenda. It's on the agenda right now.
No.
To add that to the
I
budget
think
so they
it's a
can pay
very
for it.
debatable subject. We ought to have it on the agenda and talk about it, and then make a decision. And we can look at multiple of
We
them.
talked about it during the budget workshop. I'm talking about adding it now. I mean, how many more agendas do you want to put it on?
I don't know. Till we have enough information. I ain't seen nothing but talk.
The police officer has all the information they need.
I hadn't seen nothing.
Did you ask him?
I'm asking you. Bring it.
Well,
to
the police
table,
officer
put
bring
on
it
the
forward.
agenda and give us. So, any more discussion on the budget?
I just want to add that if there are areas where people are speeding, the constituents in the town normally will let us know. They will.
They have.
Then,
They have.
And we get cops out there, and we take care of it.
Well, not to keep
Okay.
flogging the dog, but Whitehall did this for a number of years. And the first week they caught the people that were identified as speeders were residents who had called complaining about speeders.
Yeah.
Now that came from former Sheriff Jimmy Metz. But, I'm a history person, so that's history. But, things don't change a lot.
And I was at a homeowner association type meeting many years ago, and the subject came up, and some of the people wanted the police to come and patrol their area, and other people said, no, don't, because my kids are driving, or that's my spouse. And some wanted it, some don't. Same thing happened in Quail Valley when the annexation came up. If you talk to the people over there, someone wanted us to annex it because they wanted us to slow the speeders down and clean up the neighborhoods, and the other one said no. Wait until my kids are grown up and moved away, and then.
That's true.
But anyway, all in favor then of third reading of ordinance 1906 with the budget at $6,392,267, do so with show of hands. Next is third reading of 1907. This is the small tract of land that we had the public hearing on, that they're asking to change that one little sliver from fringe agricultural to general residential. Is there a motion for third reading?
Make a motion.
And second?
Second.
And,
No, we discussed it. We discussed this already.
well, I do want to answer that lady's question. If you look on, I guess that map's up there, you'll see that brown area, and then there's the orange area. There's a little sliver of land, a pie-shaped triangle piece with the dotted lines. They're building, I'm gonna call it a patio home subdivision in here, and they need that one little tract of land to be general residential so that they can build houses in that little sliver there. So that's why they're asking for that tract to come out and be changed over to general residential. And it is, from what's been shown to us, a patio home type subdivision being built out there. Any more discussion? All in favor then of third and final reading on 19.7, do so a show of hand. Next is first reading of 19.8. This is a tract of land out there on Farming Creek Road. There's a guy that bought the land that wants to annex it in. He's building a house out there, and he wants to be an Irmo and Irmo police and all that. But he wants fringe agriculture because he's going to have goats and whatever else he wants to do.
Goats.
Well, I mean, whatever you can do in fringe agriculture that you can't do in single family. So is there a motion for first reading of 19.8?
So move.
And a second?
I second it.
If you go down Chadford, that one red area to the left is where we got a town entryway. The red area to the right is where that church is, right there on the corner. And then if you go up to where the entrance is into Rose Oak,
Yeah.
right across the street is this area. He's bought the land, he's doing some work out there, but I don't think he's built yet. But I think that's what he wants to do, is to annex it in, because he wants thermal police protection and all the other good stuff.
And he's gonna put goats there?
Well, I don't know if it's goats. I do know he mentioned, I think he might have some chickens. He wants
Chickens
to
and
stick some
goats. Oh,
storage, what I call the ugly storage thing, but you can do that in fringe agriculture. You can't do that in single family residential.
But it's gonna back up to these people that are single family?
Yeah, it'll back up to that area there.
And he'll be able to fire a gun too in fringe agriculture?
Well, he can, but I don't know. I mean, the way that land lays, I think it's fine, but that's, just like this land over here at one time was. The guy that owned that land back over behind Rose Oak, I think it was 3. That was one of the reasons he didn't want to annex in, because he wanted to shoot his gun. But he had kids in the neighborhood all around him, and he never did, but he just still wanted fringe agriculture. And he can farm and, I don't say have goats, but if he wants to have goats, he can there, because it is a... Any discussion?
So that orange part is not in the town limits? That orange part is not in the town limits?
No, that's in town.
This thing,
That's the church on the corner, and that's our little entryway over here.
that's in town.
Yeah.
What's that zone? What is that zone right
This is
there?
what he wants right here.
I didn't ask you that. I asked what this is zone right here.
Excuse me.
Do you know
I
what
think
that
it's
zone?
neighborhood commercial, I think.
Neighborhood commercial?
Yeah. Normally that color is neighborhood commercial.
It's now neighborhood commercial?
The
right?
little red is. That red stuff is.
Here, okay,
The white stuff where he's at, it's not in town, it's in Richland County.
I understand.
And I think right now it's all zone rural. And the big land that belongs to the Coon, David Coon, that's a, what do you call it when you put land in a protection, a reserve, or
I know
trust,
what you
or
mean,
one of
yeah.
those things. But everything else on this road is pretty much rural, zone rural, but it's in the county.
And across the street is single-family residential.
Yeah, across the street is Rose Oak. there's houses up on this property too, and they're all rural. And that guy has the cows or whatever now on his thing. So, any discussion?
Did we talk to anybody else about that zoning around that area?
I mean, basically, all he's doing is asking for it to come in the same as it is in the county, because it's rural in the county. Their fringe is different from ours, but it's basically the same. You can farm it, you can,
Rural means you can farm on it and stuff and
yeah,
shoot guns and everything?
that, or, I mean, you can do a lot of things you can't do in single family.
But
You
if
can
it's
have
in the
chickens,
town-
you can have,
Rich?
well, all fringe agriculture in town now, you can shoot a gun on it. Not necessarily do you want to, but you can.
So there's no reason, I mean, why did you want to annex it in town if he already got the zoning he needs to do what he wants?
Wants Irmo police, be
He
safe,
wants police protection?
wants to be in town and all that good stuff. Any more discussion? Where are we at? 19.8. All in favor then of 19.8, first reading, do so with show of hands. I didn't see. Who is it? All opposed? Okay. Next is 19.9, and this is the one that we're going to, actually, I'm going to make a motion for first reading, but it's an 8-acre portion of Richland County TMS 330307. And it's not the whole 32. It's that little stuff that's on your map there. So I made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I just wanted to get that straight so we know we're only doing the 8 acres and not the 30, whatever it was. And from my understanding, the planning commission, well, it's Bob, but the planning commission approved it last night with the 8, not the 32. This is the one that's putting in the golf cart club. And so it's just the track up there, mainly along the interstate and then a little bit along the road there. And then I think from what Bob said, that they may not even do anything on the back property. So they can leave it a little bit more woody.
There's one house on James Valentine that gave me some concern because the side of it would abut this, right, Coon Road and then that. But I would be willing to knock on their door. Vote for it first reading and then knock on the door and say, are you all right with this?
And you got Howard Kugler's house is probably right here with the KOO is, somewhere in that area
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
D.L. McLaughlin's is right down here on this corner. And the rest of that land is owned PDD. We did that years ago
Yeah, we did.
for Julius and Mark. When we annexed that property, there's a tract of land that's 5.2 on the other side of the interstate, and then there's another tract of land that's not shown right here, and there's a tract of land behind this. Actually, this is the old map. Anything that's in that purple or blue is PDD. And we did that years ago so that instead of doing it general commercial and somebody could come in there and build who knows what, we did the PDD so that when they got ready to develop it, they would have to come back to the town, get it approved, and we could have some negotiation back and forth as to what goes what. You can do commercial, you can do residential, you can do a mixed in the PDD. But since that time, we never came up with a PDD rules and regulations. We just had the zoning, but we didn't come up with anything that really clarified what you could do. Changes have been made at the State House too, so a lot of people are getting rid of them. The Planning Commission is going through our zoning book. In fact, they kind of finished it up the other night, making all kind of changes. They're recommending get rid of the PDD altogether and do mixed use, which is still kind of the same thing, but it's approved by the town and not state. State has regulations on PDD, but not on mixed use. But that'll be something that, once they get through with that plan, and that's not the comprehensive land use, that's the zoning book they're going through and making all kind of changes, bringing it up to speed, and then when they bring that to us, then at that time we would vote on. But in order to do that, we got to contact every one of those property owners and let them know that we're getting rid of PDD, and then ask them, will they go with mixed use, or do they want general commercial, or do they want whatever they want? Same thing on this. It was first, they were going to change everything in the PDD to general commercial, but I kind of felt like that might open up a whole can of worms, because if we change it all to general commercial, with everything on the apartments, then people might not. So I ended up talking to Stan and Julie about just doing the 8 they want to do and leave the rest alone, and we'll deal with that later.
That's a
Which
good idea.
the planning commission is going to give us a recommendation on apartments, but they're also going to give us a new zoning thing. So between the two, we can figure out how to zone on that property. And ask the owners too, because we got to kind of ask them and see what they say.
You got on here, and was that something you had before?
Well,
Commercial?
This was something I was drawing on one day.
Oh,
When
okay.
they were telling me they wanted general commercial for the whole thing, and I was saying, well, you can do neighborhood commercial back here in general. But when they said a quarter, 8 acres of the 32, I thought it was a square like this, not that. I didn't think about it being, so I was thinking, so some of that's just my squiggly marks, is where we could divide the property and everything. But the buyer and the seller kind of got together and penciled off this piece and said that's where they, want to put their thing, because he wants interstate frontage. So
Yeah.
I guess, or from what I've been told.
And that's Irmo across the interstate too, right?
Yeah, that little.
That little
tract there.
track there, okay.
And this is Sam Kugler's property up here.
Mm-hmm.
There's a white house there and a little trailer there, and there's a big old dirt pit right there where he drops all his dirt. I was just kind of drawing on that. This part is not in town, but there's commercial along this road, and there's, commercial across there.
Mm-hmm.
So what we got is just 8 acres that they want to change so that they can build their golf court, club, golf business.
And you say you're gonna knock on the door of that,
That's the only house I saw that might be affected.
the one on James Ballantyne Road?
Yeah, but it's the side, it's on a big piece of land,
Yeah.
2 or 3 acres. And I
I
don't
thought
think,
there was a little, I'm gonna call it a little barn out here in the edge of the woods. And then there's a house here.
this one's it's right here, the
Is
side
it the White
yard.
House?
No, it's brick. The
Oh,
side
okay.
yard is on Coon Road,
Oh, okay.
but it faces James Valentine. Yeah, that's the only person that could have an objection. I'll knock on the door, I don't care. Sounds like a good business to have in town.
Mm-hmm.
And this has no bearing, except a lot of deer hunters are buying golf carts because they're too old to walk through the woods, and they don't make noise, so they can drive it right up to their tree stand. Never mind, anyway. They are doing that, so it's a good business to have.
Any more discussion? All in favor then of,
Ordinance
find out
19.
where I am, 19.9, is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
19.9, first reading, do so with show of hands. Next is first reading of 19.10. This is one that has to do with the business license. Is there a motion for first reading?
So move.
And is there a second?
I'll second it because so many people don't understand what the law says.
All right, well,
This will clear the air.
recognize Ms. Conlon go first, and then
Yes.
Julia second.
This is a result of a Facebook discussion and later on an email I sent out to my neighbors asking, what would you think about this or whatever? And the state law says you can't even get a business license until you're 18 years old. So I'm not sure we need this, but we have those that go by the letter of the law, and if there's a problem with this, then we ought to add the amendment. With the qualifications that are listed, I think it's self-explanatory, and I don't want, teenagers have been doing this for years. And I think to my knowledge, our police have never given a ticket
That's correct.
to a teenager mowing the lawn. So, but I did the amendment because of the social media discussion and because I had 5 neighbors that said, you ought to do that. And okay, I'll do it. So that's why it's here. And I think Eric's have you looked at it? Good.
I agree with Kathy. I mean, it's just like the personal carry law. The town's law cannot overrule state law. State law says you can't get a business license till you're 18 anyway. But this will clear the air and make it crystal clear.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of that with you.
Thank you, sir.
Any more discussion?
Yeah, I got some, I don't understand why you got this for 18-year-olds, anybody under 18.
Well, if
I
you're
don't,
over
I don't
18,
understand why you can't have any employees. I don't understand why they can't make more than $10,000 a year. And I don't understand why they have to have parent or guardian will be responsible for any damage caused by the child. I understand where you're going with this, and I think you're making it too complicated for what we need to do. You just simply need to remove or exempt minors or exempt teenagers exempt people from going door to door, not necessarily just teenagers. That's what the problem is people can't go door to door and solicit work for cutting grass. If you be specific about that, you don't have to have any of this other stuff. In other words, if I have a 20-year-old who wants to go door to door to cut grass, solicit door to door, that's what people are saying. They want to be able to do that. At the same time, we don't want peddlers freelancing throughout the town,
well, that's another ordinance. If we get this, then we have to amend the peddler's ordinance, which is fine with me. I'm just working one at a time here.
Any other comments? I mean, first of all, like you said, we never have wrote an abatement notice or a ticket to anybody under 18 for, so one, to me, we don't have a problem. And I don't know some of this stuff, if we're not creating a problem. When I read the thing, every person engaged or intending to engage in any calling, business, occupation, or profession, and hold apart. When I go back and read that, and I read calling, I don't think a young man walking around asking to cut neighbor's grass has a calling. I think he's just trying to earn some part-time cash. I don't think that's a business. In my definition of a business, in my mind, I don't think it's actually an occupation. If you go look at the definition of occupation and profession, occupation basically boils down to somebody doing something to make a living. When it gets all through all the mumbo jumbo and everything else, that's what it kind of basically says. A profession is somebody that has more training, skills and all that, whether it be an attorney or a doctor or dentist or whatever. So a young man or girl going door to door or going through the neighborhood asking to cut grass, or I don't know, trim leaves or rake leaves or whatever. That's not an occupation. That's not really a business, and I don't believe that's a calling. So I don't, to me, when I read that, I'm like, well, we would never write them up in the first place, because one, if they're under 16 or 17, whatever that age is, you can't. And if they're not really doing it, trying to provide for the family, then that's really not an occupation. I don't know, Eric, if your definition of occupation and all that stuff is more simple or more not simple as an attorney. But that's what I kind of understand an occupation to be, is something somebody does for a living.
That's a pretty good definition of it, I would say. I mean, I've got other issues. How's my law enforcement going to know how much money they made?
But we'll take it out.
That's really the big issue I have, is how is law enforcement going to be able to see most of all of this stuff? Whether or not somebody's an employee is not a simple determination. Sitting here in this room today, you would say I am an employee of the town. That is not true. I am a 1099 contracted. You don't pay any of my benefits. You don't put anything towards my retirement. So I'm not an employee. But I still am here and I'm still working. So really the only thing I could think that the law enforcement could do would be to see, whether or not they were working. They'd have to stop, ask them, they're cutting the grass. Are you working? Are you getting paid for this work? And do you have a permission slip to do so? I mean, that's what they could do. It seems like a huge extra step for something that's never, ever happened before, but that's just me. Other things I caught up on, did we really want to limit it to summer alone? What happens in the fall after school or on weekends? Do you want to?
Get leaves and gutters and
Right.
washing cars.
Still be in school. There's questions about that. One, obviously, in the summertime, they're not in school. Gray area. What happens to the child who's 17 years old that just graduated from high school? Is he still in school when he's working in the summertime cutting grass? I don't know. These are all gray areas, just things like that. Like I said, my big issue is how does law enforcement go after enforcing this, and do we really want them to?
And we haven't. And I don't know how long we've had the business license. Well, it was last updated in 2012. I don't know before that, but I guess we've had a business license in town since maybe the 80s, maybe the 70s.
Sometime in the 80s.
80s. So since that time, we've not had an issue.
I think we need to take the peddler route, is where we need to fix it, is not worry about the business license so much, but allow them to go door to door from our peddler's perspective. That's what they can't do right now. That's when, I believe you get a $500 fine if you caught peddling in town.
It's the standard,
Or is that
500
1,000?
500 plus
Okay.
phone calls.
$500 fine and equal to $1,000.
But $1,087? Okay. So, yeah, somebody goes door to door to ask people if you want to cut their grass. Forget about the age, forget about the time of year. If you get a kid that wants to go do this, and he goes to the door, and our peddling ordinance kicks in, because they can't go door to door, that's what we need to fix. I think this business license, maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it'll come afterwards, but that's what we need to concentrate on.
I have one for peddlers too, but I was doing it one at a time.
Oh, okay.
And-
But
and,
that's
I don't think we need to change this part. That's just me talking. I mean, I don't know.
And that peddler's license, and this may be a wide open interpretation, but the peddler's license says it has exemptions for people that are nonprofits, through churches and religious groups and all the schools,
Yeah.
everything else.
Girl Scouts.
Girl Scouts and all.
There you go.
It also says and other type nonprofits. Now, I can only imagine that a young person cutting grass is another type nonprofit. That's probably a stretch of the imagination, but still, it's a nonprofit. They're not,
I'm sure.
they're making money, but they're not making probably a profit.
I'm sure the child would hope that it wasn't nonprofit.
Well, I'm sure they would hope, but if you cut 10 yards all summer long and you whatever, that's probably not a lot of profit in there.
Well, there were 3 children in San Diego, California, that went to a horse farm and asked the farmer if they could have the manure and clean out his barns. Could they have it? And he said, certainly, and I'll pay you to clean them out. So they took it to their property. Their father had a small ranch, but he didn't raise cattle or horses. And that's where Kidco came from. Do you remember that, Eric? They all got together and formed a company called Kidco, and they sold processed fertilizer. And it got so big, their parents all quit and joined Kidco, and it became a multi-million-dollar outfit, and it was bought by some big outfit in California. And that's where a lot of this came from is, you know, kids need to have a business license, but they don't. But that's an example where it happened. But our police department says they have never stopped a child from cutting grass.
Or peddling or
Our
solicitation
Girl
or
Scouts selling cookies, and my wife won't let me go to the door in the summertime a lot because the little kid comes to the door and is selling something, I'm going to buy it. I mean, I can remember when I was a little kid, I used to get pecans off the tree in the backyard, and man, I had this one lady, she bought anything I brought to her door. But, you know, kids that are responsible enough and want to do something, that's starting to disappear. So kids that want to work, I'm all for it. But I just thought this might clear the air. People saying it's not allowed, it's not allowed. It is allowed.
Any more discussion?
You're saying it's allowed, but we have an ordinance on the book that say you can't do it. So which one is it?
Which ordinance says you can't?
The peddler's license.
Says you
The
can't
peddler's
cut
ordinance, you cannot go door
Someone
to
under
door
18 years
and
old.
solicit business.
But we never wrote anybody up for that, so every
That
day
doesn't
they
mean,
can.
okay, we haven't written anybody up, but it's on the books as being against the law.
There are a lot of laws on the books in South Carolina that are no longer enforced, but they're there.
So you're gonna pick and choose which ones you're gonna enforce?
Well, they just don't take them off the books, Mr. Walker. And my dad used to quote one, says there used to be on the books, it may have been taken off since then, but he said there was an ordinance on the book that a man may discipline his wife on every Monday with a stick that did not exceed the diameter of his little finger. And I see our
On the
attorney
State House steps.
shaking his head. Do you remember that? There used to be a law in Camden, South Carolina. If you approach the city of Camden, you must dismount, which means you were either in a wagon or on a horse, send someone ahead to ask the sheriff if you could pass through. Once you got through, if you were given permission to pass through, you had to send them back to let them know you had. And that was on the books for a long time before it was ever removed. So,
Slavery was legal too in South Carolina.
yes, it was.
And people bought and sold people in South Carolina. But they took it off the books, right? They removed that off the books, so you can't do that.
Well, they didn't remove it off the books. The 13th Amendment was passed, and the 14th Amendment and the 15th Amendment.
Which said that it was illegal in South Carolina to
No,
do
it
it.
was legal in the United States,
But it was illegal after the 13th Amendment to do it in South Carolina.
in all states.
Correct, including South Carolina.
Well, we were one of the states.
Well, not really. It led to when you got back in the Union, you were.
Well, the amendment
But
was
my
passed
point is
after
this.
the Civil War ended, Mr. Walker.
Yeah, but
South Carolina rejoined the Union. They had to accept the Constitution as it was written at that time.
Right. So
which
what I'm
meant-
saying is the law that's on the books now that says you can't go door to door to get a teenager couldn't go door to door to peddle to cut grass. We need to take that off the books. That's what I'm saying.
That's the next meeting.
For teenagers. For kids. But this
Well, you gotta-
changing the business license is a little bit too much, I think.
And you got to be careful about taking the teens off, because at the same time, that means somebody can go hire teens and send them door to door and sell vacuum cleaners. So you got to be,
Well, we can be
Real good about that.
specific, that's what I'm saying. Be specific to grass cutting. That's what we're talking about.
well, what do they want to do, leaves or clean gutters? Or
Walk
cars
dogs
or
or-
paint house or, yeah.
We can be specific to the task.
Well, if y'all can come up with something, I'll take a look at it, but in my mind, they're already exempt because they're a type of nonprofit. And that's what I would say if they came and asked me.
So you can teach your kids to lie? Or
No, I
against
wouldn't just be a
mandated lie?
nonprofit.
That's
It'd be a
exactly what it is?
nonprofit.
Well, okay.
I mean, you know, if I'm cutting one grass or two or three or four or five.
I would hope the
summer, I
kid
don't
makes
know.
$1 million doing it. You know, at least they're teaching him how to be an entrepreneur. Whether it's profit or not, I don't know, but that's teaching the kids how to be a responsible adult. You know, I think it is, but
Any more discussion?
If this passes, we can amend it at the second reading to take out 10,000 a year or whatever.
Well, I would agree with Councilman Walker that if we're going to do anything, we need to look at that peddlers because
Fix that first.
I think they can work without a business license. I mean, I don't think that they're going to qualify as an occupation or a business or a calling. Yeah, they're just doing it
Bob,
part-time.
I think got it, but I'll send it again. The peddler's license amendment.
And let's see, this is 1910. All in favor of first reading of 1910, do so with show of hands.
I'm in favor of it.
All right. All opposed?
We discussed it.
Next is the approval of the resolutions. This is where we spent money throughout the last fiscal year that we didn't have in the budget, and the state requires us and auditors and everybody to do budget amendments to our budget so that they can put everything in order and tell us where we spent money and do an audit. Is there a motion for approval of Resolution 19-4?
So move.
And a second?
second.
And I don't know if y'all have any questions on this, or you want to ask Bob anything, or
It's
Bob
state-
wants to explain anything?
It's state law.
Yeah, and most of these things are on here, self-explanatory, what we spent the money on that wasn't in the.
So over and
original budget.
above the budget we passed last year, we added $234,338 to that budget to cover all of these things. That's what we're saying we did, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay, so again, to my point of adding $5,000 for the speed detection device, if we did that here, this came in after the budget was passed. If we did that with the current budget we have, that we already passed, that would be fall on the same type of stuff here, right?
and if we did it later in the year
Okay.
and agreed, you'd just do a budget amendment for that amount if it's not in the budget when we approved it, yeah. Any discussion? All in favor then of the budget or the resolution for the budget amendments, do so with show of hands. And next item is the approval for the sidewalk grant. It's in the amount of $16,560. And even though we got 3 bids and the lowest one is $13,000, the grant that we got from Lexington County was for $16,560. Since they're going to give us that money, we can either approve $13,000 and do that, or we can allocate $16,560. And then when they get through with the 13, Bob can find some more sidewalks for them to go fix. That's why we got it on here for $16,560, not to exceed. So is there a motion for approval of the grant not to exceed $16,560?
So move.
And second?
Second it.
And I don't know, Bob, if you know how many sidewalks is in that amount right now, or where they're at, or which ones, or right off?
When we advertised it, it was for 40 sections. Each section was 8 foot by 5 foot, 4 inches thick.
And they're just scattered out?
And you can scatter it out. Yeah, we've got broken sidewalk all over town, including around the parks and the residential areas. And so that way we advertise and everybody was bidding on the same thing. So you can see the bids that came in. So obviously the lowest one, we want to spend all the money that Lexington County is willing to give us. So we'll simply find more area to fix. Send WIT out there and we'll make sure we spend it all to fix more sidewalks while we have them here.
And I think you said that was the same company that did the widening of the asphalt path in the park too?
No.
No, that was one of them that did the bid on here. These are the guys that did the St. Andrews Road sidewalk down by
okay.
Shoppers Walk, so they've worked in town.
Oh, okay. Oh, that years ago when they did all that. Okay.
Can I ask Bob a question? There's a sidewalk part near Woodrow and North Royal Tower that's been under construction forever. Is it waiting for this money?
No, sir.
That was done by a contractor, and they're gonna have to fix that.
It's been like that for a long time. Has anyone puts pressure on that contractor to fix it?
I mean, we could conceivably go fix it with this money.
I don't want to do that.
I mean, it's.
If the contractor's on the hook
That's
for
right.
it.
You cannot fix that particular sidewalk because that's in Richland County.
Oh, yeah, and this is Lexington County.
Gotcha.
Spend this money in Lexington
Yeah,
County.
all right.
So the idea, we're gonna start out here at Town Hall and work our way down Columbia Avenue.
I would like you to address that.
Why
That
was
sidewalk.
Sidewalk torn up to start with.
A contractor did it, he said.
Was that AT&T when they were doing the
AT&T putting
cable?
in their fiber cable?
Yeah, fiber.
Well, they got the money.
They can afford it, yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Now I know they cut a lot of water lines in town and they cut my telephone line too. But they came at the shop, but they came out and
That
fixed
was
it.
a blessing.
No, that was my business.
Oh, your business, okay.
But I was talking to a lady the other day who lived in Forest Acres or somewhere down there. They just cut her yard up, her water line and everything, and they're not jiffy on the spot to come get it. And she's having to pay to get it fixed and then trying to get reimbursed because she don't want to wait on it. And it's on the city side, and they don't care. But she decided to go ahead and get a plumber to fix it, and then hopefully probably get reimbursed. But yeah, you'd think they could dig. I mean, if you go out and dig in your yard, you got to call pups, and these people just go down the street and carry in everything whatever. Any more discussion? All in favor then of the repair or the awarding the contract of C funds to CBD in the amount not to exceed $16,560, do so with show of hands. Next is the approval to direct the Planning Commission to evaluate the town comprehensive plan regarding multifamily housing. This is something I put on there so that we can ask the Planning Commission to kind of relook at our comprehensive land use plan in regards to the section that has to do with multifamily housing, zoning, and where to put them, and what zoning to put them in. I talked to Ryan Cole a little bit just to kind of give him an idea of what that was about. You know, it may be because general commercial, there's a lot of places that allow multifamily and general commercial. A lot of places do that. But a lot of places also have different multifamily or different general commercial. They have general commercial 1, 2, 3 categories like that. One may be something where a Wendy's is going in, or who knows what, or a golf cart place. 2 might be something where something else bigger is going in, like Krager Plumbing. And 3 might be where a Toyota dealership or a Walmart or a large apartment complex is going in. And some of that's based on the roads, whether it's 4-lane road or 2-lane road and all kinds of other stuff. So they're going to take a look at that too, as far as, you know, and do something kind of thorough, and then come back to us with here's what they recommend, whether we need new zoning classifications, and what the density would be in each one of them, if anything, or, you know, but not just to look at it and come back with something, but to look at it real thorough and kind of resolve the issue altogether. Is if we're going to allow apartments, where, and if so, how many, and you know what kind of buffer. If you do the separate classifications, you can also say in general commercial 2 or 3, you got to have more buffering than you do in one or two, whatever. So that's kind of what I'm asking that they take a look at and, get something more thorough back to us. Now, they are still working on that planning update, but I think in July, they'll be through with that completely, and then they can start on something like this, I guess. Did I, or did either one of us? I didn't make, I'll make a motion for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion? And I guess, yeah, if you want to go.
No, I think it's a good idea.
Makes sense.
Any more discussion? All in favor then, do so with show of hands. And next is the approval of directing the Irmo Police Department to come up with a plan to increase the patrols. Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
And a second.
Second?
All righty. And Councilman Walker and then Councilman Condon.
We've already talked about this once before, that there's a large number of break-ins, and I believe we have a spreadsheet on the screen right now. It shows that there's a large number of car break-ins, and I'm including the people that don't have their cars locked into as part of the break-in process. But as you can see on this little spreadsheet, and this is across the area. Is this right, Bob? Yes. This is across the area, not just in Irmo, right? Okay. It looks like the large majority of the break-ins are occurring in Friarsgate and Old Friarsgate, and I believe down in Old Friarsgate, New Friarsgate.
Friarsgate, yeah.
There are some in other areas too, but it's not as many as in the Friarsgate area. What I'm asking for is Bob to instruct the police department to come up with a plan or come up with a something for us to assure the citizens that these are being looked at or being considered or being a priority to curb this activity. School is getting let out, I believe, this week and next week. You're gonna have a lot more teenagers, with nothing to do. They can't cut grass. They can't go door to door to solicit business to do that. I don't want them to solicit more business to break into cars to make money, to look for a little change that they have or whatever they're doing. I'm not asking for the chief to specifically to increase patrols, but if that's what he comes up in his plan, that's fine. I'm willing to put that on the police department to come up with a plan and to bring it back to council. And that's what I'm asking council to do, is to approve that request to Bob, to the police department to do that.
I don't like telling the police department what to do.
I'm telling Bob,
I know,
and he can tell the police department what
that's
to do.
fine. Now, if we're asking them for a plan or something to help ameliorate this problem, that's fine. But I don't want to tell the police department what to do. But I'm sure they'll come up with something that'll work, because they always have. So.
May I? If you look at the 2017, 2018, 2019 stats at the top, we're down so far this year. 30 people had their cars entered with no sign of force, which means they were unlocked. 14 were forced. Some people do not make reports because their insurance company is going to cover it. So there may be more on here. But be assured that our police department has a plan and is doing something, and I don't think we need to ask them what they're doing, for the simple reason when President Reagan sent jets to bomb Muammar Gaddafi in Tripoli, he didn't let them know they were coming. France didn't allow American planes to fly over, so they had to refuel in the Med before they could get there. That's one thing about the military. You don't announce to your enemy you're coming to attack them, and you're waiting for them, because then they'll go somewhere else. I'm sure our police department is doing what they can with what they've got, and I'm sure that we can all be assured that we're safe in the town of Irmo. What did I believe the Irmo News even carried this, that we were one of the safest, top 10 safest cities in the towns and cities in the state of South Carolina. Somebody decides they're going to break in a car or break in a house. If the opportunity is there, some people will do it. Turning your lights on at night, that works.
Well, Mr. Waits, we'll be happy. I'll talk to the chief and we'll look into it, but any plan will not come back to council and it won't be made public.
Well, I hope not. I mean, even when the police department decided they would make known where they were going to do traffic stops, people still got caught for illegal this, illegal that, and it had been in the newspaper for over a week, and it had been announced on our website for the town, and people still got caught doing bad things at stops. So I think our police department is doing as much as they can with the cooperation of other municipalities around the area, because we do take calls for Lexington County and Richland County, and they take calls for us sometimes when that we're overloaded or they're overloaded. So we've got more people looking after us than just what we see.
So you're saying the police already have a plan, or they?
I'm pretty sure they have a plan, Mr. Walker. They don't go out and just say, well, what are we going to do today? I mean.
So have they told you that they have a plan?
I haven't asked.
I'm asking. That's what I'm asking Bob to do.
I don't think we need to ask.
You don't? Well, then you need to vote against this then, okay?
No, Mr.
If
Walker,
you don't
I'm
want
just
to
saying
vote.
we don't need to make it public what we're trying to do, because that tells the bad guys what's coming. Let's just catch the bad guys, and it'll be done. They'll see what happens, and it'll stop. If you're going to stop kids from buying booze, even though the law has been 21 since I was 21, beer you could buy at 18 when I was younger, but now it's 21. I got cigarettes out of machines from my dad. Went in gas stations when he ran out of cigarettes while we were out driving around.
We're talking about car breaking.
I'm talking about the law, okay?
Let-
And I've got the floor too, Mr. Walker.
You're listening.
We're
in
talking
a
about
while
car
ago,
break.
and
Few
then
minutes
I
ago.
got something
Thank you very
to say
much.
as well.
And I bought cigarettes from my dad. I didn't go to jail, even though the cigarette machine said you had to be 18 to operate it. But let's not make crime in Irmo convenient. And by not locking your cars or locking your houses or making your property secure, there you go. People have dogs in their yard, and then other people complain about the dog barking. Well, the dog's barking because somebody's out there. And there was a law at one time in Richland County, if your neighbors didn't like your barking dog, just tell them. He's a watchdog. That just negates the whole problem. So we've got a police department that does a fine job. I'm happy with them. My father was a policeman during the Depression. I take my hat off to the police officers. So I think they're doing what they can with what they have. If your house is broken into, where was the police officer? Well, he might have just left the area. The bad guy's not going to come out when the police officer's driving down the street. If he does, he deserves to get caught. And I hate to bring this back, but Yogi Berra, when they asked him how did he hit so many times at bat one year, he said, I hit them where they ain't. Well, these guys are robbing houses where there's no police department doing their job, or the police department has just left the area and they've been waiting for them to leave. Then they go. Can't be everywhere. we'd have to have a large police department with 2 officers on every street. And if you want to pay for that, we'd have a mass exodus from Irmo. That's it.
Yeah, when you look at the numbers, it digests down like this. There was an increase from 2017 to 2018 of 35%. But then there was a decrease. On average, when you average out 2019, it will average out to about 105. That would be a decrease of about 14%, which tells me that it's quite possible that, first of all, the word has gotten out to lock your vehicles. And then, secondly, I believe the police department is doing a great job. There's a 14% reduction, probably, that's going to happen this year. So one of the things that troubles me, though, is I was at work this morning, and an email came in from the Columbia Chamber of Commerce. And I've spoken on behalf of my employer at the Chamber of Commerce meetings. And this person approached me and said, "What's going on in Irmo? WIS just did a blurb on this." And I had already looked at the agenda, and I said, "Gee, I don't think there's anything newsworthy that would cause WIS to talk about Irmo today." And she said, "No, they're going to talk about all the break-ins." Now, why? It's to me, this is happening in every community. Every community. When you lock your cars, you have a much better chance of this not happening. That's clear. If you're diligent and you listen to what's going on, you're going to keep your lights on. Many people I know here have even installed cameras. I have cameras. I have a security system. It's what I have done and many, many other people have done. This seemingly is a lot, over 100. We've got a lot of homes here, a lot of homes, a lot of cars, more than 2 in each home. So we have 10,000 cars in our town.
At least.
There's been 120 in 2018, 105. No one wants any. I get it. I get all of that. No one wants any. But 120 out of 10,000 cars, I don't think we have a true problem. And there's a reduction that will probably happen this year. So why the press was called in, it's making our town look bad. Why would you want to put a bad light on the town when there isn't a huge problem here? I don't understand.
Yeah, when I look at this stuff too, and I went to a public safety thing down at the Municipal Association, one of their advanced study courses, whatever, and they talked about public safety, fire, and police. And there was a guy from Mount Pleasant, I believe, one from Florence, the sheriff, or the chief of police from the city of Florence, and then the chief of police from Lexington town, and then there was a couple fire chiefs. And one of the things they talked about too was a lot of the quote gang initiations, especially for the younger, is to pick them up, van them in, tell them to go down this road, grab the doorknobs, and open and get what you can and go to the next house, keep on going. And if the car is locked, they just move on because they don't want to set off anything and all that kind of stuff. I had read something on one of those, I think it was next door fire escape not too long ago, where somebody was talking about in the middle of the night that there were car horns blowing, which is where the van says somebody's in the area, police are in the area, it's time for me to pick you up, get ready to get picked up. So I know some of it is coming from that stuff. But they also, even though they're out breaking in cars, they are intelligent, and they know if I can go down this street and 20 cars are unlocked, and I've been down it 3 times, and I'm going to go down it again. It's a good street. But I think the more we get the word out that people should be locking their doors, we talk about what the police can do. To me, even if they put something on Facebook once a week or every other night or who knows what, and I wouldn't ask them to do that because to me that's a lot of, I can't do it, so, they can probably do it easier. But I know that's work, and to have to remind somebody. I would also ask, how many homes do we get broken into a month? And the difference is nowhere near. Because people lock their homes, and they know to lock their homes, and there's more valuable stuff in your home than it is in a car. But people lock their homes. We need to, get people to start locking their door. I would also, if you're just going to ask Bob to do something, is to, when we get those monthly reports, is to put on there how many of these are residential, how many of these are commercial, how many of these are forced entry, and how many of these are not. So we can really see, is there better data, better clue as to, because I know some of these on that list are in Walmart shopping center and exercise place up there gets a fair amount where people go through. And this doesn't, break it down what time of the year, but, if people go to Walmart shopping and then go out and put stuff in their car, somebody sitting out there watching, they're going to go break in the car and get whatever it is they just put in there and drive off. But I think we can cut back a lot on these numbers because a lot of these, 89 out of the 120 are not locked. 69 in 2017 out of the 89. Well, we don't know that they were not locked, but there's no forced entry. So I think, if somebody, we get called to a house 4 or 5 times for the same home, I think at some time we have to tell the people, hey, you got to lock the door. The more we're out responding to that kind of stuff, the less we're out responding to other stuff. And it's a use of our resources for something that, we didn't lock our home when I grew up, but at some point we did. Somebody mentioned to me the other day, and they were kind of being sarcastic, and they're like, well, Hardy, I don't think I should have to lock my door. I live in America. And I said, well, you lock your home, and I live in America too. And guess what? In America, things happen. You have to lock your, and they told me too, they locked their car, and it was in their garage, and the garage was locked. But, that was, so what we got here, though, what it says is approved directing the Irmo Police Department. It doesn't say approved directing Bob. It says approved directing the police department. I think we can ask Bob that he can come up with some stuff and talk to the chief and see. I know when I lived in Alabama years ago, and they had these burglar alarms were first coming out, and they put them in your house, fire alarms and all this stuff hooked up to that service. And if you got called, or if the police got called to your home 2 or 3 different times for a false alarm, they were billing you $40, $80, whatever it was back then. I don't want us to have to do something like that, but at the same time, it's kind of the same thing. If it's and if you look at a lot of these neighborhoods on here, Archer's Court, Beacon Hill, Carmel Commons, Cornerstone, you have hardly none. And I don't know, Chief, when it says Richland County, or Bob, what that means. Is that?
That's the unincorporated portion of town that's not in a subdivision.
Okay.
The unincorporated or the incorporated?
Oh, the incorporated in the Irmo limits. But
Oh, okay.
the part that's not actually in a
But
subdivision.
like, say, Broad River Road or?
Fitness,
Correct.
women are seen
Oh, okay.
in their cars and walking
So anywhere that's not in a subdivision, so to speak.
YMCA by Walmart.
Okay.
The Walmart area.
Okay.
Those particular locations.
Okay.
Anything in Richland County that's not in a neighborhood or
commercial or in a business or something, okay. Any more discussion?
Yeah, you said that this takes away from police officers responding to other things that they're responding to. Somebody calling for a car break, and you said that false alarms, they get billed after so many chances, they get billed after false alarms. People are saying to us, council, our cars are getting rummaged through, our cars are getting broken into. We want to know that y'all are concerned about that and that y'all are going to do something about it. Now, I'm asking you to direct Bob to ask the police department to come up with a plan or to come up with something, not knowing what we're going to do specifically, but to have them address these things. All we have to do is simply vote yes or no. We want Bob to direct the police department to do that. It's as simple as that. So I'm ready for the vote.
And I want to
Call
make
for
an
the vote.
amendment to it. I want to amend that and say approval to direct Bob, our town administrator. And I also want to amend it to direct council members who are getting these contacts from people to help educate the people to lock their doors as well. Because it's a two-way street.
Locking the doors is not the issue. The
It's a
cars are
two-way
getting broken
street.
into.
It's a two-way street. We got to do our part as far as getting people to help us do the job and by locking the doors and that kind of stuff too.
Well, that's why we have a communications director. Somebody can make sure that information is getting out, or we can have the police department direct that and communicate.
There's an amendment. Is there a second?
I second the part about Bob.
Well, it's all one thing.
Okay, I second that.
And all we're basically doing is ask Bob to look at it, but also asking us to do our
Y'all
part
lock
too.
your car doors. Okay, mine's done.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
All in favor then of the approval to directing our town administrator, Bob, to come up with a,
Amendment first.
That's right.
yeah, the amendment, okay, that's right, yeah. All in favor of the amendment, was there any more discussion on it? Okay, all in favor then of the amendment to direct our town administrator to work with our police department to come up with something, and also to direct council members to also inform the public as they're talking to them. Does that make sense? Kinda?
To inform the public of what? The council to inform the what?
The public, that they need to do their part and lock the doors as well. And
You
help us
just
out.
did. I mean, that's not what I'm asking to do. I'm
That's
asking the
the
police department to do. Okay.
So all in favor then of that amendment, do so with show of hands. All right, now back to the amended approval. Do we all know what it is? All in favor then of that approval, do so with show of hands. Next-
Mr. Mayor, if I might clarify something. When Mr. Walker brought this up on Thursday, the chief and I started talking into it. I mean, I want you to know we take all of these complaints and these situations seriously. I mean, I don't see why this is an agenda item, but, you know, as soon as it was brought to my attention, I got with the chief and we started reviewing it.
And I just want to say, Bob. Good. Chief, you do a tremendous job. Tremendous.
And next item is presentation by citizens. This is where anyone who wants to address council on anything, whether it's on the agenda or not, may do so at this time. All we ask is you give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening, George Glassmeyer, 100 Denbeck Road. A number of issues. I'll try to get through these as quickly as I can. I'm a bit mystified as to why there was extended discussion as to Mr. Walker's proposal for this $5,000 speed detection device, because unless my memory is failing me, I heard him make the proposal to the agenda item, and there was no second to that. So given that there was no second, what's the justification for any further discussion on that topic? I don't get that. As to the proposal to amend the business license ordinance, I think that's a solution looking for a problem. If it's correct, from what I heard, it's not possible for someone, or not legal for a person under age 18 to obtain a business license. And if that's the case, even if the police were to cite a 17-year-old for cutting grass without a business license, there would be that 17-year-old would have an excellent defense of impossibility because the law doesn't allow him to get one. So again, I think the council spent a lot of time, wasted a lot of time discussing a problem that's not there. I want to discuss the executive session that's coming up here as to a security matter at the community park. Obviously, council can't get into the details on that. I would ask you this: if it involves renewing the contract for security cameras, which I suspect it does, before council decides to do that, I would ask that you look into how fruitful the contract has been over the years that has been in place. How many crimes or safety issues did it detect for the buck we spent? I was opposed to getting those putting those in there to begin with. I thought we're going down a slippery slope, and I'd like you to take a good hard look at maybe dialing that back. The final thing I want to talk about is, you may recall several weeks ago, the state of South Carolina and the town of Irmo recognized Confederate Memorial Day, which is a state holiday, and we recognize that now because several months ago the town decided to get our holiday schedule consistent with the state holidays. And I have, just before the holiday, a few days before the holiday, I saw a story in the state newspaper dated May 9th about the upcoming holiday and how much it was going to cost taxpayers to, both at the state and local levels, to have that holiday. And the writer of that article interviewed Councilman Barry Walker about that. And I have a printout here of a segment of an excerpt from that, and I found it rather interesting reading. And I'll quote from the story. Quote, Irmo Councilman Barry Walker is one of the few African-American local government leaders in Lexington County. He sees the holiday as a celebration of Southern heritage, not as a state-mandated sanction of slavery. To quote Mr. Walker, the story says, quote, I mean, hell, it's a day off, unquote, he said. Quote, I'm for taking a day off anytime I can get it, unquote. I'm mystified by, and then he goes on to say, Walker, who is running for mayor of Irmo, said he is not offended by Confederate Memorial Day. Confused about a few things about that. Perhaps Mr. Walker at a later time could address those. When he says he enjoys taking a day off anytime he can get, the only productive work I know that Mr. Walker's involved in is this very part-time job of being a town councilman, so I don't understand why he doesn't have every day off anyway. But the thing that mystifies me even more is, Mr. Mayor, could you bring the audience to order? I believe I have the floor here.
Okay, go ahead.
The thing that really mystifies me about this is Mr. Walker, by his own count, states that he's classified me in this very chamber as a racist 3 times. Now,
4 times.
Well, however many times, okay? Yet it seems somewhat hypocritical for somebody that's calling me a racist to be in support of Confederate Memorial Day. I just don't get how that works. Isn't that not hypocritical? Tell us how that works, will you, Mr. Walker? Thank you.
While we're victim shaming tonight, I just wanted to ask, are any of you aware that the Circle K was robbed while this meeting was going on? Should they lock the doors and ask people to knock? Since you're blaming people for car break-ins who leave their doors unlocked to their property. I'm just curious. The police are a pretty big presence daily at the Circle K. Yeah, makes no sense to blame people for their cars being broken into, does it? No, it doesn't. To compare a car to a home also makes no sense. You can shoot an intruder coming into your house. It is not legal to shoot someone breaking into your car. You can point to this all you want to. Trust me, I just went to a CWP class. I do know. I'm being very careful to be sure I know who I can and can't shoot. Trust me. After my dog's been murdered, I know. Now, secondly, the fringe agriculture on Farm and Creek Road. Mostly the residents of Friars Gate, what was it, last year, wanted chickens. Because of the way the vote was worded, as if everyone wanted their own chicken farm, of course, chickens are not allowed in Irmo. So to rezone a property that backs up to Friars Gate backyards is a slap in the face to those residents. That means they can have any farm animal, not just goats. I'm really concerned that council doesn't know what these things mean and that council doesn't bring up valid points when you guys are debating, such as the business license. If the state law says you have to be 18 to get a business license, and the town law says you have to have a business license to earn money in town, that means you can't earn money in town unless you're over 18. Doesn't take a genius to figure this one out. No, maybe the police department hasn't ticketed a child yet. But I will tell you, there are some unofficial council members who've been appointed by several of you who turn people in daily. And yes, children have been stopped. They've not been ticketed because our police have consciences. That's the bottom line. I know some personally who have been stopped and asked, are you earning money? And it was not during Chief's time as police chief. So, it is needed. There needs to be an exemption, period, for children to be able to make money. It is for profit, nonprofits. You can't say, well, they're earning money, but it's nonprofit. It's pure profit. Some of their money might go to lawnmower gas. That's about it. My son does it. I hope he doesn't get arrested since I told everybody that. But he cuts grass regularly, and he earns a pretty good little amount of money doing that. That's his spending money. And he was stopped. So, okay, what else we got?
Just a second, you said he was stopped from cutting grass?
It's been several years ago, but yeah, he
Oh, okay.
was. He was, a police officer pulled up beside him, asked him if he was making money doing it, and the officers actually who told me, don't let him charge, make him take
Oh, okay.
donations, and it won't be illegal, because someone turned him in for cutting grass. Okay, the Planning Commission evaluating the multifamily housing, I believe that one person needs to be excluded from that who can stand financially to gain. And it's not a personal reason. There should be no one voting. There should be no one planning who represents people who want to build multifamily housing. That is a conflict of interest, period. There shouldn't even be a discussion on that. Also, I'm realizing that we are still being required to say our name and address. It's been over a year since we decided we weren't going to do that anymore, remember? For our safety.
Say that again. I didn't hear that.
The mayor is requiring people to say their name and address still.
Okay.
Over a year ago, y'all voted, and we were all told we don't have to do that anymore. Several of us have said we don't have to do that anymore. And then he announces our address by heart, which to me is a major safety concern. My own children didn't learn their address by heart for many years. So why my mayor knows it is beyond me. He's never been to my house that I'm aware of. So that's a lot that you guys need to think about. That's it.
I thought we said they had to get their name, but not their address.
Michelle Carpenter, 112 London Pride. I got a couple things. The crime in the park, Easter, when we had that Easter egg hunt with Jada, all the police officers were called away from where they were to go down to the park because there was a domestic thing going on down there. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't know the details, but cameras are needed there. There's crime here. I don't understand how y'all can't see that. On my road, London Pride, 2 houses down, little old lady has a Ford Festiva, right? Car's been broken into twice. The first time, the doors were locked. You know what they did? They broke the window. And you know what they stole? Nothing, because there was nothing in the car to steal. So you tell me, they're looking for change. Some of these kids are stealing food. They're stealing sodas out of people's car. These kids are hungry. Just last night, there was, I think, 4 kids walking down Royal Tower at 2 a.m. with backpacks. I'm sorry. There's no jobs that I'm aware of for teenagers on a school night at 2 a.m. I'm sorry. There's just not. Why are kids walking around at 2 a.m. with backpacks? You want to make a law? Do a law so that teenagers, younger teenagers, shouldn't be out at that hour. That's absolutely ridiculous.
There is a law.
And I don't know if there's any break-ins last night. I have no idea. It wasn't put on Facebook if there was. But my other point is the little old lady, the second time her car was broken in, she left the doors open. And you know what? They didn't break the window. They just opened the car doors and threw her manuals all over the place because there was still nothing in the car. You can't blame people for, if they lock their car, they're still going to, if they want to get in it, they're still going to get in it. So locking it has no relevance. They're going to get in it if they want to get in it. And that's the truth. It really is. So the crime in the park, you need the cameras there. And if something happens, you're going to want video of it. And I don't know what happened that whatever day we had that Easter egg hunt, something was going down. There was like a domestic thing or something. I'm not sure what it was. And every time we come in here, certain ones of you pick on Barry. Every single time we come in here. And I'm sick of it. I am sick of y'all picking on him.
It's okay. I don't get picked on.
No, it's not. It's not right. You owe him an apology from last time. That's all I got to say.
Before we go further, am I wrong, Chief? Is there not a curfew in Richland County? If you're under age 18, you can't be out after midnight? Because I had some students when I taught at Hopkins that came and visited one of my friends and I because we were building a swimming pool. And we informed them that there was a curfew because we had found out there was one, at least in the city of Columbia. And we ended up taking them back home because they couldn't go home. They couldn't walk back home. Thank you.
Hi, Eric Sickinger. First of all, I want to comment on the car break-ins and to Mr. Pouliot's point regarding it looks like we're down a little bit this year. Possibly, right? I'm not sure if the car break-ins are equitably distributed over the course of a year. I would assume that they might be more over the summer, but I don't know. Hopefully that's the case. I wasn't really pleased to see Hidden Oaks is like second or third place in there, unfortunately. But then again, we are right next to New Friarsgate. On a really positive note, I want to provide some recognition to the helping hands of Irmo. A really cool story. A resident posted on the citizens page that they had just received a pink notice regarding her lawn. And I mean, it was within like 30 minutes. Someone had been organized to get right out there and cut that person's lawn because they were disabled and they weren't able to do it on their own. So Wade and the group for Helping Hands really appreciate that. So my primary topic here today is around last meeting and the people who spoke, the way they spoke, and the way that everyone was treated in the meeting. I think that in terms of decorum, in terms of Robert's rules, it was a complete disaster. There are other words for that, but I think disaster is putting it nicely. It's easy for residents who have a particular perspective on an issue to be really emotional and to be upset, or they think that someone is saying something or taking a particular position, and so they come to the table with those opinions, or they sit in the audience and have those opinions. That does not make it okay for someone to use this podium to accuse a resident sitting or non-resident, someone sitting in the crowd. That should not be acceptable at all. So there was a very specific instance, someone standing here and talking about someone else. Now, there might be other fingers pointed saying, well, that person before them said that. Across the board, there need to be a Robert's rules or something needs to be held so that I can't stand here and say something negative. I suppose something positive is all right, but say something about someone else in the audience. I'm not even sure how I feel about the fact that I can call you names and you can't say anything about it. Because as Robert's rules, this is me talking to all of you, right? And if that's the case, then across the board, you as a council should not be allowed to ask me questions. Now, a lot of times, I think it makes sense that you should be allowed to, but to ask clarifying questions or to follow up on something that I say or someone else says to make sure that you understood it correctly, or maybe just to interject and say, I'm sorry, could you say that again? But the reality is that this isn't a back and forth conversation, right? This is us coming up, saying a few things, hopefully without calling out names of people in the crowd, and then going back and sitting back down again. Someone that spoke at the last meeting, it's the thing about these addresses, and people aren't even citizens of the town of Irmo. I'm frustrated at what happened in the last meeting, and I'm having a hard time just putting it in words because it was gross. It didn't reflect well on us as a town, regardless of where you stood on changing the number of units allowed per acre, which was the actual issue at hand. It didn't reflect well on the town of Irmo. It didn't reflect well on us on y'all as a council. It didn't reflect well on you, Mr. Mayor, in holding people accountable to their rules. And I think that we can do better. I hope that we do next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Wade Deloach, 156 Finsbury Road. A couple things I want to talk about. First thing is, I went to the Planning Commission meeting last night and got a comment on that. Really don't know how it all works, don't pretend to. I'm not against the golf cart or anything like that, but the way the meeting went down, and not particularly the golf cart, could be anything. Something other you might not agree with, that came forward. I'm not going to say what it is, just think in your mind of something other you wouldn't want to see the town have. I mean, the golf cart thing, I'm not against that, don't get me wrong. But my thoughts is this. You had a meeting last night, and then tonight it was brought to you. So how much time did you guys have to think about whatever was proposed from last night? If it had been something other controversial or something other that you had a lot of questions about, you had no time to look into it. Neither did the public. And I just think that we should have a 2-week minimum period between the time you have your planning commission meeting and your council meeting. And it should also be a communication of what it was at the planning commission to you guys and the public. So that, if there's something over there that you got questions about, you got time to investigate it and do a more thorough thought instead of just, all right, I'm looking at this map, trying to think where that is. Who's that going to affect? What is the code on that? I'm not sure. That sort of thing. And do I need to knock on somebody's doors before I come up and make a decision on this? What about the neighbors around? Stuff like that. I mean, the other thing I'd like to see is perhaps the public has come up with something or other that might bring you aware of that you didn't know before you vote. So how about when you come up with something from the planning commission, let people speak to you before you vote instead of after you vote. Because they might have come up with some information that would be vital to your vote that might sway your mind one way or the other. Now, the people were fine my thoughts and comments last night wasn't really directed at the people, but the way that it went down, the way the rules are, and the way you got it tonight. I think it'd be more fair to you, more fair to the people. I think that we can make wiser decisions in the future, and it would help everybody out. Not mad at anybody, and some people took my post wrong last night, but they didn't even discuss anything. They come up there, the man spoke. When he got through speaking, they motioned it, seconded it. Was there any discussion? No. Okay, let's take a vote. One voted no. I'm curious, why did he vote no? There's no discussion, So, and was there something other that he knew or thought that, maybe the rest of us don't know about? They say it's just for public record. Okay, that's fine. I get it. But there's no transparency there. They met before the meeting, okay? Here I am sitting in the meeting. I'm just a citizen. Don't know a whole lot about real estate and all this other stuff. Depending on these people to do what's right for the town, to represent all of us. And I'm supposed to trust it. How can I trust something like that? How can you trust it? You gonna take their word for everything? You got something tonight from last night. You voted on it. And I'm not saying your vote's right or wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing personal against any. But think about it. Were you able to make a good decision, an educated decision, in a moment's notice like that? Shouldn't you have 2 weeks, have the information in front of you, 2 weeks, and then if the public has something, then if they come up to you before you vote, if they got something other, I ain't talking about getting personal with anybody, I'm talking about really facts about something other that might affect the town or the people. Okay, the other thing I want to talk about, the speed check device. I'm in favor of any tool that helps the police department. The speed check device, you can track a record of where people are speeding and all that, but it does more than just that. When you're tracking traffic through an area and you want to use it for future records of how you want to design your town, you got something to look at. We're already talking about traffic here on Lake Murray Boulevard. We really don't need one there. We know what that is and when it is. But, if we want to build our town and look at alternatives, okay, we don't have much traffic over here, but maybe we can make this 4 lanes and alleviate, I'm just saying. Any device or tool that we can use that would help us educate the public, give information to the police department, hey, I need to track this area more often at 8:30 at night instead of the 4 to 5 like we thought, just saying. I think any tool like that, and I understand your budget, and I can appreciate that. But if it's a safety device that can save one life, it's worth it. I also want to talk about the car break-ins. The mayor's right. We all got responsibilities. We should lock our vehicles. Lights on helps, and security cameras and all that helps. Not everybody can afford cameras. I'm as wrong as anybody else about forgetting to lock my car every time. I try to. 99% of the time I do. I just think downplaying that it's not that big of a problem is not what the public wants to hear. And I think what Barry's just trying to put forth is some confidence in the public that we're not doing just the same old thing, even though we got a great record and they're doing a great job. But are we putting together plans to try to make it better? That's all. I don't think it was meant to be finger pointing or anything like that. And then my last thing is about the Confederate Memorial Day thing that Mr. Glassmeyer was saying. There's families in my family. I had people on both sides of my family, uncles and cousins fought on both sides of that war. It was an ugly war. I'm not happy and not proud of the slavery thing. I know it's wrong. But you got people on both sides of that family here that have died just like they did up north. And that's what Confederate Memorial Day did, is just recognize the soldiers that died down here. Even though it was wrong, and I'm not saying that it was, but y'all think I'm prejudiced? Y'all think I'm a bad guy? My family fought in the war, both sides of it. What does that make me? Barry likes me, we get along great. Does that make him prejudiced? I don't get it. The whole state recognized Confederate Day. Does that make the governor and the state house prejudiced? I'm not trying to justify it. I just think this thing about trying to pick on somebody and call them racist stuff like I don't know. I just think it was wrong. But anyway, do appreciate you, what all y'all do. Not trying to point fingers at anybody on the planning commission. It's just how it's ran. And the transparency is just not there. I'm supposed to trust it. And y'all supposed to trust it. What if something came up that you really didn't like? You voted the wrong way because you didn't have enough information. Yeah, you got 2 more meetings. But, just saying, it's just a curveball that could be stopped in advance. And that's all.
Thank you.
Patricia Witt, Minehead Road in Friarsgate. My first question is to Bob. I saw there were -2 handicap spots out there tonight for parking. Did you all go down from 4 to 2? Yes, sir, in front. Oh, okay, you weren't getting a lot of need for that? I gotcha. And number 2, Mr. Poulat, with all due respect, you had spoken earlier about why do you think Irmo is in the news all the time. Something just popped into my mind. Do you think it could have anything to do with maybe HUD looking at some issues, maybe DOJ? Did it ever cross your mind? Now we're under a microscope, and I remember Eric Sickinger telling you on the day that they were all talking about the DOJ case. He says, "You've put us on the map now. We're going to be under a microscope," and I think maybe that could be why everybody's looking at us all the time. Who knows? It just came to my mind. And also, I encourage you to please let the kids mow the lawn. I'm disabled. I can't do what I used to do. There were some nice kids in my neighborhood that come by. I even had a man come by once and say he needed $30 to pay his electric bill. And I said, well, if you mow my lawn, I'll give you $30. So I'm always trying to help people, but I consider mowing the lawn similar as to American baseball. Don't you think that's been around many times? I know I started and just recently retired, but please don't tax the kids for mowing the lawn or trying to help people. There are people that have had surgery, maybe they've got an abatement notice, and they can't mow the lawn. So if a kid comes and he sees that it's a foot high, that just would be great if he said, hey, I'll do your yard. You know, I spread the wealth around whoever comes. I said, yeah, I got something for you to do, but I'm fussy. That's what I tell them. And that's about it. But those are just the things that came to my mind about why we might be on the radar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Wow. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Mike Ward, 118 Ashbourne Road. First, I want to thank the council for the job that you do, what you were elected to do, to sit and represent the town of Irmo. Chief, what you and the police officers do for our town, I thank you for that. Bob, Eric, all the staff, even the 1099 staff, thank you. I do have a few comments from tonight that I just want to share my opinions. Item C under new business, that was the 1910 for the business licenses. I've asked this question before, but I find it a bit unnecessary for us to turn around in our local ordinances and redefine something that is already stated in our state ordinance. So if we're following what the state and federal guidelines tell us, maybe we don't need to redefine it again at the local level, because I've been to several meetings where the staff has proposed changes where the state changed their language, and now we have to change our language to match it. I'll relate it to a comment I made back when we were discussing whether or not handicapped placard people that have a real reason to park in a handicapped spot, whether they should be allowed to park in their grass. And there was a comment made that said, well, how will we define whether or not they're handicapped? Well, the state already does a really good job of that. So let them handle that, and we just follow that. I also wanted to make two more points to that. Mr. Mayor, with the definition of profit or nonprofit, it may have been a little bit of a joke to say that we're stretching it to call them nonprofit, but I cut grass as a teenager. I was doing it to make money. So just with that, if we need to refine some language, let's refine it. Also, all night I've heard several references to minors, under 18s. I know 3 adults that have been on Facebook that have full-time jobs. They just don't make very much money. Summer's coming up, and they want to know if they can go cut a few yards, go fix a few gutters, help patch something in the backyard. So I think we need to be careful when we restrict it to minors, because I think we're just taking one problem and moving it into the neighbor's yard. So let's just be careful with that. I think the car break-in numbers, for me, what really astonished me was the number of break-ins that were listed in New Friars Gate. That number was just overwhelming. But I did a quick tally, and if my numbers are right, 188 is the no-force break-ins. Yeah, 188 is the number of no-force break-ins that we've had in 17, 18, and 19. So I do agree, maybe we need to run a campaign. And I want to make a couple of suggestions, because when I sit on boards, I hear complaints all the time. And that's part of your job, to listen to people complain. You also get to listen to people praise you, but at the same time, you have to listen to us complain. When people say, what can I do to help? I say, well, the biggest thing you can do instead of complaining is offer some solutions. So I have 2 tonight that I thought of. One, I got to pick on you for a second, Mr. Waits. I'm going to quote you because I wrote it down as you said it. Don't let them know you're coming because they go somewhere else. Well, that's exactly what we want. We want them going somewhere else, okay? So here's my suggestion. However we do it, we need some kind of police marketing campaign, for a lack of a better way to say it. Something to let people know we are in the neighborhoods. It's not just a car sitting at the Circle K waiting for the next call. That's not what our police officers are doing. They're out and about. So how do we do that? I don't know. Maybe a sign that blinks that we're speeding will help. Maybe some more lights in places. Maybe some more cameras. I don't know how effective the cameras are in the park, but I know other towns and other cities are adding cameras to their general public areas. So maybe some cameras that can catch people if they are walking at 3 a.m. with hoodies and book bags on. I think that's stereotyping a little bit, but at the same time, if that's what catches those people that are doing these, then we need to look at it. And I move over, Mr. Glassmeyer made a point about the executive session. He made a comment that he thinks that maybe it has to do with the cameras in the park. And I'll agree that maybe we need to look at how effective they are. But I personally believe that if we were to remove those cameras, we're going to start seeing issues. That's a large area of land that is blocked off. So now the police officers are going to have to enter the park to go into patrol. And I don't know if they patrol the park now through vehicles during the night, but it's just one more deterrent that we're taking away. And then my final point, I want to second what Mr. Sickinger said. I don't restrict it just to the last meeting, though. We've had several meetings where there's been a lot of disrespect thrown. We've seen it among the council members. We've seen it from the lectern here towards the council members. We've seen it from the lectern towards the audience. Most of you know I am a big Robert's Rules fan. I'm also a fan of having a meeting that is on time, efficient, and where people aren't disrespected. So I have actually prepared a letter, and I'm finalizing some verbiage on an amendment that I'm going to send to every council member. I'm going to share it with Bob. I'm also going to share it with the local news, because I think there's some simple rules of decorum that we can put in place that the leader at the helm can enforce. Right now, I've looked at our ordinances. There really are no rules that he can enforce except, yeah, I'm at 9:08, so I've about hit my 10-minute window. That's the only rule of decorum that we really have. So I want to offer some things, let y'all hopefully discuss them in an amendment to the ordinances. Thank you for your time.
Okay, Marie Hutchison back. I'm just not clear about a few things, and I'd like for y'all, before you vote on them, to think about them more carefully and maybe inform us before you vote as to this kind of thing. The Farming Creek area, if it's brought into the town of Irmo, will it be allowed to have cows, chickens, and goats in the town of Irmo? I know y'all can't answer my question. They're talking about that Farming Creek area that the guy wants to have goats and chickens and cows or whatever. It's in Richland County, and they want it to be brought into the town of Irmo. Am I wrong?
As fringe agricultural, right?
Yeah. Okay, if you bring that into the town of Irmo, do they not have to follow the Irmo regulations? And are we allowed to have chickens in Irmo? I thought that had been discussed. I don't know. So I'm just wondering about that kind of thing. And I went to the planning meeting last night too, because I just was curious as to what was going to go on, and it was 15 minutes. No, they didn't discuss anything, but they seemed to all know what they were talking about. So after it was over, I asked questions and found out where that 8 acres of land was. One of the things I'm really afraid of now, if our planning commission doesn't act fast, whether or not the apartments at Parkside and Cooper's Trace, is that the name of it? Mm-hmm. Whether or not those are allowed, I don't think we need more apartments. I don't care who's living in them. I don't think we need more apartments. And I'm afraid that if we start breaking this up into little bits and pieces of land here and there, and somebody's going to say, let's make it general commercial. Oh, general commercial, that means you can do just about anything with it. I don't think we should allow more apartments built in this area until we take a better look at it. The Planning Commission takes a better look at it. We don't need them, or I don't think we need them. And there was something brought up at that Planning Commission last night that has not been presented to you, but from my understanding, it was emailed to the mayor. There were three main things brought up. One of them was the 8 acres, and this one was something about the dance studio would not allow Freddy's to use their drive, and they wanted to, okay, maybe you haven't gotten that, but they wanted to make it so that the town council could decide whether or not a business had to let another business use their drive. And the thing that bothers me about that, I don't even know where the dance studio and Freddy's are, okay? The thing that bothers me about that, I live in Hamilton Park. If this new apartment complex comes in, are they going to have access to the road behind the businesses there? Are y'all going to say, oh yeah, they can use that road too, to make more problems with the businesses and then with the apartments? I don't want to see that happen. So when they present this to you about using the ins and outs of other businesses, really think about what you may be setting yourself up for in the future, just like that 16 units per acre has kind of backfired on everybody. Think hard about what you're doing and the thoughts of the people in Irmo and what they are going to want or not want, or how it's going to affect other things around Irmo, not just one business. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, next item is discussions, no discussions. Executive session, we actually have two. Bob informed me a while ago of another one, but we have a executive session for contractual and security matter, Community Park of Irmo, and we also have one, Bob said we need for a personnel matter, doing with administrative.
Dealing with what?
Administrative, personnel matter, something to do with the administrative or administration. I don't know which one.
I need some more information. I mean, what kind of personal matter?
Well, we can't really discuss personnel matters because.
Yeah, we need to put it on the next agenda then.
Well, we can make a motion to go into an executive session for a contractual matter, which is what's on the agenda. Can we?
I so moved.
Well.
Second.
Can we do the other one in there? Do we need to announce it? So we're going to discuss the personnel matter as well? Okay. All right.
That's against the law. I don't understand. I mean, we have one item to discuss. Are we not following the rules, or are we going to skirt that tonight too? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, well.
All righty.
Send an email.
All in
Get
favor
on
then
there.
of the executive session, well, any discussion on the executive session for contractual security matter? All in favor then of the executive session for contractual and security matter, do so with show of hands. We will go into an executive session and we will return. Make sure we cut our tricks off. We are back from executive session. No votes were taken. And next on the agenda is adjournment. Is there a motion? And second?
Second.
And all in favor say yah, yah.
Yeah, yeah.
Make it